really, we've thought about all the pieces and parts that you need to go address things like supply chain visibility or workflow automation. And here's a whole
Right.
stack. And we guarantee that it works together. Our prices are published and public, and and they're very cost competitive, and they're ready to deliver immediately, and we can deliver a whole project in a matter of weeks if need be.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, I have with me Kevin Price, who is the founder and CEO of AccuCode, a technology company that specializes in disruptive solutions across sectors like retail, manufacturing, and logistics. Since founding the company in 1995 out of his basement, Kevin has led AccuCode to become a leading provider of network infrastructure, mobility, and data collection technologies with over $100 million in revenue. AccuCode has been recognized multiple times by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing private companies in America, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nice
Yeah,
to
man, the
be here.
pleasure's all mine. I'm really excited to get into some of the work that you're up to right now. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's start with a couple of minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed yourself as the CEO of AccuCode.
When you're 26 years old and grossly unqualified to do what you're setting out to do, you don't know any better.
There.
And if you did, you probably wouldn't have done it. But fortunately, I was in that position. I uh, I bought a Commodore 64 when I was 9 years old and taught myself BASIC, and I've been a bithead techie ever since. And my first job out of college was with NCR, selling paper rolls and printer ribbons, and that ended up moving me to Colorado in the early '90s. And about a year after I moved here, I went to work for a company in the hardware side of the barcode industry. Worked for them just briefly for a year, and then I literally resigned on Friday and started this on Monday.
Wow. Uh, it's quite a leap to go from being, in the bucket of employed people to entrepreneurialism.
Okay.
It takes a lot of gumption, it takes a lot of bravery, it takes a lot of other things. What for you was kind of the biggest catalyst that pushed you over the edge and led you into that space?
The company I was working for, and I won't name them out of respect, but they were terrible to work for, and they were one of the leading companies in the market at the time. And this was, relatively early on. They had come from the mini mainframe and VAX days, and they were one of the early market leaders in the barcode sector. And they were just terrible to work for. I'd worked there over a year. I hadn't had any training or demo equipment. I'd never used any of the technology. And I was complaining about it the whole time. And all they wanted to know was what my forecast was. And so I literally resigned on a Friday afternoon and started this on Monday with the belief that if that was the competition, then I liked my
Mm.
odds, and that was really it. And I had my first order by 10 o'clock that morning from one of the customers I was already doing business with.
Wow. So it's one of those situations where I think I can do this better. So you embark on that path to find out if what you
Yes,
thought was true, and lo and behold, several decades
it
later,
was.
that is true. You've done a wonderful job
Yes.
of meeting and exceeding that expectation. So what was it like in the kind of early stages? I hear initially maybe some of the first customers come from your own network. Eventually, you'll tap that out, and you'll have to be charged with this task of developing an inbound and outbound pipeline of leads and prospects and turning them into
Oh
customers. So,
yeah.
what did that look like for you in the early stages?
In the early days, it was, I was calling on anybody that would let me in the door. In general, people that made things, shipped things, or moved things. Uh, this was back in the early days when barcodes were just coming to market. Barcode scanners cost a couple $1,000 a piece, and they didn't work very well. They were big and cumbersome, and frankly, it took a catalog like 6 inches thick of all the different cables and power adapters you might need to plug that into your dumb terminal. And now that same barcode scanner is 75 bucks, and what color of cable USB cable would you like that in, gray or black? And that's that's I've watched it go from esoteric, really difficult, cumbersome to wholesale commodity where nobody cares. And I've ridden multiple waves of different technologies and innovations since then, starting with networking. And it started with barcodes, and then the first wireless network we did was in 1996. It was pre-Wi-Fi, and we covered the entire Angel Fire ski resort with two radios because we had an FCC license for the site, and we could turn the wattage up to anything we wanted to. But the radios were only passing, we were doing like 98.2 baud, and we were passing back and forth like 26 characters in a barcode, validating lift tickets and on the side of a mountain. And they were running a DOS handheld, running a VT terminal session, and that was how you did it back then. And we've literally done every version of the technology since then. So many of those early customers, like the Wilkerson Corporation, that was that first order at 10 o'clock in the morning that first day, they're now a division of Berkshire Hathaway and have been for over 20 years. Um, Jerry Baby Products was my other big customer back then, and at the time they don't even exist today. At the time they were the market leader in car seats and high chairs in the
Hmm.
baby space. And they got bought by Spalding Sporting Goods, who immediately tried to move all the manufacturing to Mexico, and now they don't exist as a company anymore. Um, but that's how it goes with customers. They come and they go, and you have to be ready to adapt. Um, Back when tape drives and hard drives were a really big thing, Colorado was one of the largest manufacturing centers for all of that. And we did Quantum, we did Seagate, we did Max Tour, we did Storage Tech. There was just the whole storage sector became one of the biggest verticals we were ever in, and then almost overnight it was gone.
Wowzers.
and they still make hard drives, but they don't make them the way they
Yeah.
used to, and they don't make any of them in the United States anymore. Um, so it's been quite a journey. Today, most of our business comes from very large retailers, particularly grocery retail. Kroger's been our biggest customer since 1999. We built their first generation of home grocery delivery software back in between 99 and 2002, and that became the basis of a long strategic relationship with Kroger. And we've established ourselves as experts in the grocery retail sector and how to go apply new technology to those environments.
So it sounds to me like a lot of the foundation that you laid back in the late 90s, early 2000s with, your existing network and creating, worthwhile experiences for the clients that you were serving, that you kind of tapped into other networks. And so a lot of your business comes from people talking about you and how well you've served them so far.
Our number one source of new business today um, is when Kroger IT employees get a new job somewhere else. They leave Kroger, and literally, it's happened multiple times where their first day on the job, their first call is to AccuCode, and it's, "Hey, I'm working someplace new. It's a mess. I need your help. When can we get together?" And we've picked up a lot of very meaningful and loyal customers that
So
way.
that's really interesting because I can tell you, and I'm sure you've had this experience yourself. Not a lot of businesses understand the value of that level of a relationship in how deep you go with people, how well you serve them, going above and beyond. What did you do along the way to intentionally set up something like that so that your clients do have the remarkable experience, but then also what inspires them to want to share what your or the products or services they get from you with others?
There's a couple of aspects to it. You know, the hardest part of what sales, the irony here is I got my degree in marketing and advertising from the University of
Mhm.
Oklahoma. And I actually turned down a scholarship offer to go study physics and instead paid for a business degree because, from my perspective, I can study science and engineering for the rest of my
Mhm.
life and follow the greatest minds in the world. And I don't have to pay for that. Whereas business is hard because it involves people, particularly selling. and communicating in business is hard. And so I paid for a degree in that area, and it's still the hardest part of what I've had to do over the last 30 years is, when you're really truly different than almost everybody in your marketplace, the hardest part of your job is convincing everybody that you really are different, because nobody would believes you. Everybody else behaves this way. Why would you do it a different way? Well, because their way is not very
Mm.
smart. Our approach, most of my competitors are there to sell a part number. And once the part number has been shipped, that's it. That's the end of their involvement and the end of their commitment to the process. For us, the product, the part number was never it's a necessary evil. Yes, as I tell the hardware manufacturers themselves, you're not the reason I'm here. You're the bait. You literally are the thing I'm putting on the hook, hoping to catch something. And the something is the customer's trust and engagement, and the opportunity to really engage with them around their strategic initiatives and become a partner in delivering those outcomes. The part numbers, those I'm going to need some hardware. I'm going to need some distributed device populations to facilitate that accurate real-time visibility of my business processes. But what we do as a core business is that it's very simple. I help businesses create accurate real-time visibility of all their operational processes so that they can go scale it in a repeatable, sustainable way. And technology is the best way to do that, especially if you've got a disparate labor force where they may or may not be qualified to do the job you're asking them to do. Well, now I can outfit them with technology so that I can put the expertise of one human being behind 1,000 people, and those 1,000 people can go work as though they were experts on scale, because the other guy is writing the script for them as they do it. And that's how we run AccuCode today. It's how we help our customers run their businesses. And it means, scalable, repeatable, and sustainable. That's one of our core mantras at AccuCode. If your approach to solving the problem isn't all three, then you didn't really solve the problem. You just traded one set of problems for another set of problems. And that general philosophy has made us instrumental to some very big companies over the last 30 years. Some of them, like Kroger, like Lennox Corporation, it's been decades of one project after another, one technology after another, and we are their go-to partners. When they decide they need to do something new and hard, we are often the first guys they call because we're those guys.
So what I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily the item, the product, or the thing that the person is coming to buy that's important so much as it is the level of service that you serve them with to help them implement that. So it's not just, hey, here's a machine, it does XYZ. It's like the whole thing.
You really have to understand the problem and the process with a meaningful depth, because otherwise you'll just throw technology at it and it won't really get you to where you want to
Hmm.
go. And I see a lot of companies, a lot of businesses that spend a lot of money on technology and never actually get the strategic outcome that they were trying to achieve. And that's because they took their strategic outcome and turned it into a list of part numbers they were going to go buy. And then they bought them and they deployed them, but that didn't actually solve the problem, because if I don't re-engineer the processes, if the people in those processes don't want to use the technology or they consider it a threat to their job security, they won't. They'll sabotage it and it'll fail. And so it's really important that the process match up with the way the job needs to be done, that the users have been engaged, that their input, has been validated, and that your approach to how you deploy it, how you train the users, how you service it and support it is designed around a continual sustained outcome. And most of the time that's just not what happens in the IT industry. They bid low and then they gouge you as they go. And when the project, if you're still willing to do business with them after the project's over with, they're surprised. And that's that, and probably your sanity should be checked if that's the case. We are, we go in, and if the customer is willing, we'll make a commitment to actually deliver the strategic objective at a fixed budget on a fixed schedule. And if we miss our mark, it's on us. We'll pay the difference. Um, I challenge my customers and my competitors all the time that if my competitor isn't willing to make that same commitment, I question either their integrity or their qualification.
Yeah, good point. And beyond that, the idea of how we reach people and share with them that this is the option, or that there or that exists as a potential path that they can take. That's a really important, um, I guess, element to focus on. We've entered this new space in maybe the last 5 or 10 years of marketing, where it used to be that you could put your product or you could put your business in the right locations, whether that be a trade magazine or you show up at the right event. But as technology has gotten more complex, your solutions have gotten more complex, the strategies have gotten more complex. And so bringing people in to that and helping them understand that it's more than just the SKU, it's all of that, poses its own set of challenges. I wonder how you're addressing that in the way that you are communicating with prospects and with customers.
We've we're getting better at it. We're in the process right now of building a new portal that incorporates some artificial intelligence so that customers and channel partners will be able to come in and basically describe a problem to us, and the site itself, the portal, will come back based on their application and their objectives. It'll come back with a series of technology and recommendations for how to address that and to show them meaningful content about, okay, here's how we apply this technology to that problem. um, I see artificial intelligence as having a tremendous impact over the next few years on sales and marketing communications. It really gives us an opportunity to tailor the message and to deliver a much more targeted understanding to the customer. And we hope that that will lead to higher rate of engagement. I said when we started this conversation, the hardest part, what I've done for the last 30 years, is the sales
Hmm.
and marketing. When you're really different, it's hard, and you have to prove that. You can't just say it, and it takes sometimes years to earn that customer's trust, and they're to convince them that you are that guy. Um, the other side of it has been scaling a sales organization in an industry where everybody else is mostly an order taker. I work in a sector where up until the last 2 years, this industry has grown by 20% or better every year for over 30 years. Well, as Winston Churchill once said, you don't know who's not wearing any swimming trunks until the tide goes out. Well, in the last 2 years, the tide went out in our industry. And for the first time in 30 years, this industry shrunk by almost 50% in the last 24 months. We've shrank by about 10% in that same time frame. And that's a testament to our position in the market and how we engage with our customers and the markets that we service. But the truth of it is that when you're in a market where everybody's growing by double digits on an annual basis, the salespeople have a tendency to be very lazy and
Mm,
entitled, and they're not good. Getting anybody to go, for instance, do real cold calling is like pulling teeth. I've hired 5 salespeople for every one that actually stuck and performed, maybe closer to 10. And we did $100 million, about $1 million per full-time employee, with a 6-person sales team. And that's quite an
yeah.
accomplishment. I take a lot of pride in that. Unfortunately, it also means that it makes it really hard for me to scale my business. We're focused now on a new strategy, and part of why we're building this portal is because we're launching a new channel, and we're going to go start selling through some related industries, and we're going to be turning those channel partners into commission only sales reps that have the opportunity to make a lot of money selling everything AccuCode does, and we take delivery for all aspects of the customer delivery, service, and support, and all they have to do is introduce us and help manage the relationship. And with that, we're hoping to grow by 4 or 5x in the next few
Yeah,
years.
that's really interesting because it lines up with some of the other kind of trends that are in the tech space in terms of a education based marketing as a top of funnel action. But then in the middle of all of this is it used to be called a community, and I'm hearing this idea of playground getting tossed around where you create some open source stuff that everybody can kind of dabble in until they figure out the right use case for a series or a tech stack or a bunch of different things that are they're trying to like duct tape together, and then a managed service provider now steps in and puts that all together. So is that kind of is that part of what you're innovating for, is creating those environments?
We call it the AccuCode Certified Ecosystem, or ACE for short. And the whole idea is that we're putting together targeted stacks of network and mobile computing and data collection and line of business software and utility software, so that really we've thought about all of the pieces and parts that you need to go address things like supply chain visibility or workflow automation. And here's a whole
Right.
stack, and we guarantee that it works together. Our prices are published and public, and and they're very cost competitive, and they're ready to deliver immediately, and we can deliver a whole project in a matter of weeks if need be. That's very different than how our industry works today. Today, the customer literally has to go out and engage with each component in the architecture as a one-off relationship. He's likely going to have two or three salespeople involved in every one of those relationships. And by the time he gets his project done, he's got 12 plus people he's negotiating with and trying to deal with from a delivery service and supply standpoint. And it's a mess. And as I say, if everybody solves the problem a different way, then the customer never gets a solution. When we all work together to solve the same problems the same way, everybody gets a better outcome at a lower cost, and the outcomes are more scalable, they're more repeatable, and they're more sustainable. That's the whole idea behind ACE. And we're selling to the hardware manufacturers and the OEMs the same way we're selling to the channel partners and the software ISVs and the end customers. It's a sales pitch to everybody because it's a completely different way of doing business in our market. And we're hoping to go use this concept to create a much more scalable channel where we can go sell complex solutions through salespeople that already have a relationship with the customer, but they don't have any knowledge or expertise in this particular area. That's our
Yeah,
job.
that's really powerful. So you become the conduit now for people to put that stuff together without having to deal with, like you said, the 12 different
Yes.
salespeople and all this negotiations that's going on to duct tape, as I said before, the system or the tool that they need to work properly for their business to succeed.
And we've already negotiated very competitive upfront wholesale based pricing so that we can offer particularly those SMB customers a much more competitive proposition than what they would get if they went out into the market on their own. Just because when you're Kroger, everybody's beating your door down to give you a great deal, but when you're a five-store operation, nobody cares. You're going to pay two or three times as much for that exact same component as what Kroger's paying for it. And I believe we're at a time economically where that's not really a viable approach to market engagement. You need pricing models that scale and that scale down if you want to go penetrate the bulk of the market now. And I work in an industry where 90% of our historic revenue came from Fortune 1,000 companies, because the mid-market SMB customers have just not ever done this level of automation because it was expensive and
Right.
hard.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about it is to your point, I've heard a lot of people say we're either aiming for the bottom of the bulk bin where we can sell on volume, right? And that's the, single mom and pop solopreneurship, that type of thing. Or they're aiming for the top where you can sell that big ticket item and, collect a giant check at the end of the day, but very little is being addressed in that mid market where like you said, the bulk of the action is taking place. And so I guess that's what kind of put you on the radar as a disruptor in terms of your approach to this whole thing, because it's just so much different than what everybody else is up to.
I, you know, my suppliers, companies like Zebra Technologies and Honeywell and Cisco and Extreme Networks, Access security cameras and Verkada security cameras, these guys, their whole business up until the last 2 years was selling into tier one enterprise customers. And their whole approach to market engagement does not scale down at all. They've got sales guys that are making, $100 to $500,000 a year that literally will not cold call, that don't have the time or patience to go work on a project that's, only going to be a few $100,000, and it just doesn't scale down. And now, because of what's happened in the industry over the last 2 years, everybody's trying to figure out how to go, you know, into that SMB sector. But they're at the same time they're laying off thousands of people in their own sales organizations because their old approach isn't working and the numbers aren't being met. And we're going to see some radical change in the channel and in the direct sales organizations over the next couple of years because of what's happening right now in the
Yeah,
market.
that's very innovative and you know, incredible insight for you to kind of recognize that early and start aiming at that. On that note, Kevin, as we kind of come to a close with our time together here, I wonder, looking forward, what are you aiming at? What are some of the big goals? What are you excited about that's coming down the pipeline for you?
Um, you know, Technology is now at the tip of the spear for almost everybody's business. The issues we have with inflation and in the labor market mean that everybody now is looking towards automation to improve their efficiencies and to scale their operations. And that bodes well for our sector. At the same time, I'm one of the last large independents in my industry. Most of the rest have all been bought up by private equity acquirers in the last few years. Again, I like my odds if that's the competition. Guys with money have a tendency to focus just
Mm.
on the money, and they don't really understand the industry, the needs, or the customers, and they think it's a formula. It's not. Because it involves human beings, and you have to have a plan that aligns with the emotional and economic realities that the human beings are dealing with. And I have high growth expectations for the next couple of years for AccuCode. I'm expecting to go from 100 million to 500 million within the next 3 to 5 years, and our channel strategy is at the core of that. And if we pull it off, we're going to change the way technology is sold in the North American channel and market significantly over the next few years. And I'm hoping to come up with a much more efficient and scalable approach to go to market execution. Because, like I said, that's been the hardest part. It's funny. We can literally go deploy 150,000 devices in a matter of
Hmm.
months with no notice. We can scale up to that kind of scale, no problem. But when it comes to scaling our own sales and operational organization around that, that is hard. And technology isn't there yet where I can really go automate my sales and marketing process. There are some tools, and we're playing with some of them right now, and I have hopes, but it's still the hardest part of what I have to do. Applying technology to other people's businesses is the easy part. Convincing them to let me is the
Yeah,
hard part.
that's exciting. That's a huge goal. And I'm rooting for you. I think that the work that you're doing is definitely necessary, especially when it's going up against the big machines. So I'm with you on that front. As we close out the show here, Kevin, I wonder if we imagine, another founder out there who's up to it, trying to create something, navigating these uncertain waters. What sort of advice might you offer them to keep them pushing through?
There's a couple of things I would say. One is, unless if you're not running so hard and fast that you don't fall down and hurt yourself every once in a while, then you're not really trying. Two, I say this. I've been saying this for 30 years. I don't have any competitors. Only business partners that don't know how to work with me yet. And if you think we're doing the same things, then you don't really know me, because I guarantee you we're not. And I have actively engaged with some of my direct competitors for a long time. And I'm always happy if I do, as I say, if I can do something you can't, you should let me help you. And if you do something I can't, or you do it better or cheaper than I do, I want you to help me. Let's work together. If you do it better than I do, I don't need to compete. I'd rather you do that for me. And I think the world would be a much more opportunistic and healthier place if we all recognize that we're only really competing against ourselves. We don't have any other competition. And the only question is whether we're giving it our all or not. And most of us know the answer to that question. Even I can tell you, I'm not giving it my all. I'm the most successful half asser you'll ever meet. And part of the reason I'm able to do that is because I know I am, and I've surrounded myself with really good, hardworking, thoughtful, organized people to compensate for my own deficiencies. And that's every business person needs to recognize that. You cannot be an army of one. You have to have people around you that are good at the things you're not good at, or you're never going to succeed.
Incredibly powerful. I love the vision. You cracked me up a couple of times there. I think that's brilliant. To to end things here, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. They're welcome to go to AccuCode's website at www.accucode.com. That's ACCUCODE. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm an open profile. I'm glad to connect.
Excellent. We'll make sure to link to that then in the show notes so that anybody watching or listening will be able to find you easily there. On that note, anybody watching or listening, if you want to get in touch with me and my team for any of your marketing or AI needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this conversation. Thanks for joining us for this episode, and I will see you in the next.